My feeling was to give the school a sense of freedom, both physically and architecturally.
I was in Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I'd heard that Ray Kappe had started the program 3 years prior at Cal Poly, and he surrounded himself with a lot of young architects. And I thought that is cool, because up at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, they basically had a routine that wasn't about imagination, it was about being employable once you get out. And that just didn't set well for me.
What Ray and his chosen faculty did was they lit such a fire of enthusiasm in the architecture department that it overwhelmed the rest of the school. They didn't know what the heck to do with this. It was always a battle with the culture of the architecture program and the rest of the school.
Then we find out that Ray Kappe is basically demoted from chair to just faculty. And then we asked the dean why, and he says, for the good of all of you. And my first thought was, if it was for our good, why did you ask us how we were doing? We never see you. We learned how to drive the dean mad, finally, when we realized that he wasn't going to change his mind, by silk screening a high contrast image of Ray's face. And we climbed up on the roof in the middle of the night and then rappelled down to a ledge and plastered all of the windows on two sides of his office with Ray's face. And when he went into his office, he went mad. He just went mad, and we chained him in. And he was pounding and pounding, saying, let me out, I'm gonna really get even with all of you. And we had a protest that lasted for a couple of months. But the whole while we were meeting on a regular basis in Ray's office.
He brought up an idea, why don't we just start a new school? Which is absolutely the craziest, most insane thing in the world. And of course, we're naive enough and kind of open enough to just say, okay, let's talk about it. And we started meeting and saying, okay, we're going to start a new school, and it'll be in Santa Monica.
I met with a representative from the Department of Education. Then I went with the realtor and looked for a building, which we found, the first 20,000 square foot building in the old industrial area of Santa Monica. And that was April of 72. And by fall of 72, September, we started our school. We had a list of 120 kids that were going to come with us from Cal Poly Pomona. And of that list, 50 or 60 finally did. This was a fantastic group of kids. These kids are not only trying to learn about architecture, but they were painting the walls of the building. We were planting trees. They were helping us become better teachers, because everybody agreed that we had to make it work.
Los Angeles was very segregated. You know, most of the neighborhoods that are developed now had gone downhill. It wasn't as lively. There was art going on there, and I think that was probably the most exciting. Architecture-wise, not really that much.
Our commonality was resistance and a fierce attack on status quo. We're in the middle of Vietnam, and we're in the height of the civil rights kind of issues. And it definitely was influential on your definition of architecture at the time and its relationship as a social art form. And we were being hugely affected by what was going on in the art world.
I worked with Dean Noda and a number of other people pretty rigorously trying to set up a system for workspaces. So actually that photograph that we have are the prototype floors for the scaffold system, and we had just glued them all up, and you needed a way to weight them, so we found a way to drive a Volkswagen on top as the weight, and that became the cubicle system. And the other was the rhombic dodecahedrons that came from a project that was started at Cal Poly.
If you were a student at the new school, you had to be very adventuresome and nomadic, meaning they all lived in the school 24/7.
Probably 3 or 4 of us literally lived at the school. That was my mailing address. That's where my tax returns came from. I had no other place to stay.
I remember arriving, it was jerry-rigged garages and jumbles of something, trying to find the front door, very difficult to orient yourself. Then all of a sudden a big double height space, but again, no light. So it was counter any kind of architectural legibility or formal clarity.
The main space was the gathering space. That was the commons. That's where democracy was formed in America. I knew that. So we needed a main space in every location. And that was where everything could possibly happen.
Ray felt there should be more discussion in the city to make more people aware of architecture. So we started this program, which I coordinated. It was an evening lecture program, open to the public, no charge. We called it Design Forum Public Programs. We rented the third level to this video group in exchange for our use of their equipment. We learned to use videotape. It was wonderful, and we built up this archive.
Every single architect that we could coax to come to lecture, they came. Everyone wanted to talk at SCI-Arc.
I started getting posters, sort of crazy posters that were advertising SCI-Arc, and I got 2 of them. And the second one I looked at, I said, oh, it says it's going to be accredited and not just a little fly-by-night thing. So I got more interested. When I came in, I was about the 5th woman in the school of 60 men. By the time I graduated, there must have been 25 women or 30 women in the school in that 4 years.
Half the class became women. When I started asking these women who were on their 2nd or 3rd career, why now? And they said, I wanted to do this since I was a young kid. I was discouraged because I wasn't good at math, or this is a man's profession. And it was pretty amazing. The time management of a woman with a child was immensely better than anybody else. They were not only getting their work done, they could draw on a lot more than others might be drawing on.
I have always been a math science person. I was super interested in molecular biology and genetics. SCI-Arc had a personal interview to get in, and Michael Rotondi interviewed me. I remember he wasn't asking much about my drawings. He wanted to know about what I was doing in science and why was I leaving that. I think he thought that sounded more interesting, but I think he was just seeing that I was incredibly curious.
How do we learn as architects to make connections between things that we are unfamiliar with at the moment, but we're going to become familiar with? That's where curiosity comes in. Curiosity is absolutely essential. That's what drives learning. I've always believed that we could do things that other institutions can't do. And instead of being competitive, we have to be cooperative. You got to give everybody the same privilege you expect to be given. So when it went from me to Neil, he asked me, what is the most important thing I need to know? And I said, the most important thing you need to know is no matter what you're thinking about, you got to see the whole thing before you make a decision. He goes, what do you mean the whole thing? I said, you got to see the whole organism, all of the parts, how they move, what motivates them to move.
Moving from the marina, from Beethoven Street to downtown to the Arts District was a big deal and a bold move. And Neil Denari was right. This was the right thing to do.
This place is a chameleon. It changes, shifts, moves in a direction that just when you're getting comfortable, you've got to get comfortable in a different way.
Well, Ray thought change was good. He never intended to create the school in his own image. Never.
The main thing that I think we have to be teaching is to become a polymath. How do we start to think of architecture as a way to make it possible for people to easily slide across domains?
My education and my evolution at SCI-Arc allowed me to have insight into many, many issues later in life. Textures, colors, architecture, urban and regional planning.
I don't think you'll find the energy and intensity that you find at SCI-Arc in any other school. Every time you come back, it's different. I think it's exactly in the spirit of the place to not produce an answer to the question, what makes SCI-Arc special or what is SCI-Arc?
The biggest thing that Ray did was to create the school with a flexible attitude and to not be afraid of change.
you.